Hi, this is Meg from Flow Financial Planning. Welcome to my occasional video. As you might know by now, I work primarily with women in their early to mid-careers in the tech industry, which means you're anywhere from, 23 to 45, typically. And if you are anywhere from 23 to 45, you might occasionally think, wow, there are a lot of years left between me and retirement, and especially between me and the end of my life. That's a long time to plan for. Now, the sort of the financial system and even our government has made it very straightforward to save and invest for our retirement, right? We have our 401k, we have our IRA, we can contribute $19,000 to our 401k and $6,000 to our IRA, and that money is set aside for retirement. Like, we don't really need to think about it, and most of the people I work with just sort of by default max out their 401k, and then you're just sort of done, right? Saving for that long-term time frame. And the difficulty arises is that if you're 25, you've got 40-ish years until you retire. And if you're 45, you've got 20-ish years until you retire. And that is a long time to plan and prepare for, but there's no like midlife 401k. There is no clear-cut, simple, straightforward default way of saving and investing, preparing for those, as one of my recent clients said, that nebulous middle. So how do we save for and invest for that nebulous middle, right? Long term's taken care of. Short term is kind of just taken care of. People are pretty darn good, in my experience, at stockpiling cash for, buying a home in a few years, or, if they're going to go back to school and get a degree or go on a big vacation. People are good. They know how to. It's sort of obvious that what you want for that is cash. And so you just accumulate cash over here, and you're accumulating your retirement savings over here, and then there's this big void in the middle, and this really stymies people, and they end up accumulating a bunch of more cash than they need, because they don't know how to deal with it. And the way I like to deal with it with my clients is just to think about your money in buckets. 3 sort of notional buckets. There's the short-term bucket, which we've discussed. That's simple. That's usually just cash. Maybe it's a CD. I don't know. It's for things you need money for in the next 1 to 3 years. We've got your long-term bucket, which is sort of retirement until the end of my life. And that's pretty straightforward for most people because, again, there are 401ks that your job gives you, and just you sort of by default participate in that. Everyone understands that. Even if they know nothing else about personal finance, you know that you should save to your 401k. And then I also have a midterm bucket that I usually use with my clients. I sometimes call this actually an opportunity fund, because it turns out that while we don't have much idea about what's going to happen in our life in 5, 10, certainly 15 years, one thing we know for sure is that something big is going to happen. And so it's going to be really nice if we've got money sitting around to ease or to fund that opportunity, that transition, that change, whatever it ends up being. And so in practical terms, what this midterm bucket ends up looking like is simply an investment account, a taxable brokerage account at a Vanguard or Schwab or a Betterment that you just put money in and invest just like you invest money in your 401k or your IRA. The big difference being that you just invest it more conservatively because you need that money sooner, right? If you're not going to retire for 40 years, you can afford to invest that really aggressively because you have decades to make your money back after the stock market crashes. But if you need your money in 5 or 10 years, you don't have decades. And that is the reason you'd want to invest it more conservatively. But the specific investments you put in it are going to be very similar to what you have in your 401k. The idea is that you want this account, this investment, this taxable brokerage account. It's just like a normal account. And then you would invest conservatively using just regular stocks and bonds and funds. But the target of it, the goal, the purpose of that account is to fund your life in the next 5, 10, maybe even 15 years. And I find this concept of buckets really resonates with a lot of my clients. It gives them a way of visualizing the money they have and the money they have dedicated to certain goals or certain time frames of their life. There isn't actually a lot of financial benefit to this arrangement, because you could just heap all of your money together and make sure that part of that heap is cash and some of it's stocks and some of it's bonds and an appropriate balance. The benefit of this bucket approach is really behavioral. It's really psychological, in that you can see oh, this bucket is for the next 3 years of my life, and I have $100,000 of cash or $50,000 of cash in it. And I feel good because now I know I have enough cash for what I want to do in the next 3 years. If you're 25, it's sort of hard to conceptualize of how much money you'll need for retirement. But if you're maxing out your 401k, you're at least sort of doing bare minimum. And then in the midterm, you can see oh, I've got $100,000 in this midterm bucket, in this investment account, that I can use if I decide to go back to school, stay home from work for a kid, change careers, move cross country, whatever it ends up being. And you can think of these buckets very independently of one another and be assured that you have enough money for each of these 3 time frames of your life. And also, when the stock market goes wibble wobble wibble and your 401k loses half of its value, that's freaky, but you can more easily think to yourself, oh, well, I don't need that money for 3 or 4 decades, so I can afford to sort of ignore that, right? And this midterm bucket, which we've invested more conservatively, it will lose less value because of that conservative investment, and that can be reassuring. So I hope if you are having this problem wrapping your head around, okay, what do I do between now and then? Because that's 40 years or 20 years. That maybe this idea of managing your money in buckets and having that brokerage, that's a normal investment account that's conservatively invested for that nebulous middle, maybe that will be helpful for you to actually move forward, not just keep on, stockpiling cash or something. Again, this is Meg Bartelt from Flow Financial Planning, and have a lovely day.